everyone, I'm the Shades, and welcome again to Shades' Soapbox. So as many of my fans already know, after 5+ years of avoiding it as best as possible, I've finally become a fan of professional wrestling again. After years of being tortured with WWE's never-ending bullshit, I finally reached a breaking point and decided to just stop watching it altogether, and pretty much became burned out to even check out other promotions like Ring of Honor or many of the indie feds out there. The only way I learned about what was happening in wrestling was from my RVT buddies at the WrestleCast, Matty J and TWK, and from watching YouTubers like Wrestling with Regret, What Culture, Cultaholic, and WrestleTalk. But I was made aware of a new promotion that started about 2 years ago called All Elite Wrestling, or AEW. At first, I wasn't sure since I was a bit gun-shy, not wanting to get burned out again. But as time went on, I decided to give it a shot, checking out Revolution 2021. Though, given the ending to that was not quite as explosive as they planned it to be, I wasn't entirely sold. But then, I heard about a magical moment that I honestly thought would never happen. Word began to circulate that a wrestler who, like me, had gotten real sick of WWE's mistreatment finally came back after 7 years of not wrestling at all, and he was going all elite. That man was CM Punk. Now, let me make it clear why this caught my attention. I was there during CM Punk's rise in the 2010s, how he'd won the WWE title many times and yet never felt like a top star. Not because he wasn't talented, but simply because WWE didn't want him to be. I was watching live when the pipe bomb dropped that fateful night. In fact, I think we were still doing Monday Night Riffs on RVT at the time. And then I saw the Summer of Punk, where he won the title at Money in the Bank before he left the company. Then I saw him come back 2 weeks later, only to lose the belt thanks to interference from Kevin Nash and a Money in the Bank cash-in from Alberto Del Rio. Ugh. From there was all the screwy finishes, his long reign as champion while still not main eventing pay-per-views, only to lose it to The Rock just so The Rock could fight John Cena again after the once-in-a-lifetime match was made to be a total lie. Then I saw him just totally mishandled and his eventual departure. I saw it all, and it was not long after I started my descent into just not caring anymore about WWE. So hearing that Punk returned in AEW was an immediate ear perker for me. And then I watched the clip of him making his first entrance back in 7 years. Folks, I'm not even kidding when I say I've not heard a crowd this loud in my entire time as a wrestling fan. It was even louder than when Triple H came back after his quad surgery, and that crowd was fucking loud. But this crowd was so white hot for this, given it was his hometown of Chicago, it literally drowned out the music. But okay, Punk was back, so what? My friends, this was only the beginning. After hearing he was challenging the young Darby Allin to a match at the next pay-per-view All Out, I decided to give it another try. And this time, I was hooked. Turns out, All Out was pay-per-view of the year in most circles, and I consider it to be one of the best wrestling pay-per-views I've ever seen. I came for CM Punk. I stayed for everyone else. Sure, I was excited for Punk, and seeing guys like Christian Cage, Chris Jericho, Matt Hardy, Sting, and others was a nostalgia trip. Not to mention the commentary dream team of Tony Schiavone, who had been mostly absent since his WCW days, and good old JR, Jim Ross, who's up there in his years admittedly, but he could still call like a pro. And their main commentator, Excalibur, is able to live up to their level, which is saying a lot about the man. But I also got to see the likes of the aforementioned Darby Allin, who is more of a risk taker than even Jeff Hardy at times, with his insane near sacrificial offense. Guys like Orange Cassidy, a guy whose whole gimmick is that he puts in the minimal effort possible, and it still ends up being exciting to watch. The Jurassic Express, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, one of the best mixes of speed and power I've ever seen. How about one of the greatest tag team cage matches ever, with the Young Bucks, two of the founders of AEW, going all out with the Lucha Brothers, Rey Fenix and Penta El Zero Miedo, in what ended up as a bloody, violent, and intense war. Easily match of the night. Even their women's division, while still in need of some improvement, puts the Fed's women's division to shame, with ladies like Riho, Nyla Rose, Jade Cargill, Thunder Rosa, and Ruby Soho. I never saw her as Ruby Riott, and I'm kind of glad for that, honestly. Then you have MJF, who is the best heel ever. I've never seen any wrestler consistently get the kind of heat that man does, and it's glorious. Then there's Kenny Omega, and how the fuck did I sleep on this motherfucker? An amazing athlete with an incredible moveset and an uber geek to boot. No joke, this is a guy who got Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale himself, to make an animation for 2 of his entrances, and even allowed him to come out dressed as Sans for Halloween with Megalovania as his music that night.
Well, Kenny Omega
But like I said, this was only the beginning. Thanks to my buddy TG Omega, who introduced me to some of his friends, I've been able to watch AEW Dynamite and Rampage nearly every week, and I'm able to enjoy every moment. Sure, not every match is a home run, but there's pretty much guaranteed to be at least one amazing match every show. They also do something the Fed would dare never consider, putting on main event level matches as the opener. And I don't mean just a great match in and of itself, I mean they have world title matches opening the show. Imagine seeing Jon Moxley, the former Dean Ambrose, fighting the aforementioned Kenny Omega for the AEW World Heavyweight title to start an episode of Dynamite. Even better, who else could get away with that kind of match going to a 30-minute time limit draw and it still be considered a great match? Hell, even better, near the end of the year, Bryan Danielson, the former Daniel Bryan, took on Hangman Adam Page for the belt, and it went for a full 60 minutes, and it still ended in a draw. Now, you might think that's a cop-out, but not only was it setting up for a later match, which was also a banger admittedly, that 60-minute match was a match of the year contender. It was that damn good. Another thing, AEW allows its talent to make money outside of their ring work. One of the reasons that Adam Cole, baby, didn't re-sign with NXT is that WWE, or as I've been calling them, the Fed, wouldn't allow him to run his Twitch channel, The Chugs. At least not without taking a chunk of his revenue to do so. You guys do know what an independent contractor is, right? You can't actually do that since he's not a full employee. Of course, they never make their talents employees since that would force them to include benefits, and well, they're too cheap for that. So they need to either make them employees or allow them to make money outside the Fed. You can't have your cake and eat it too there, buddy. AEW, on the other hand, not only allows its talents to do stuff off the books, it's practically built off that kind of thing. The Elite, featuring the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and others, started making a vlog series being the Elite in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it has since carried over into AEW. It was that vlog series that allowed them to get noticed by everyone and led them to their work in the ring. So they are more than happy to let others do the same, like Sammy Guevara, Evil Uno, Adam Cole, and many, many more, making a name for themselves online, which then leads people to check out their work in AEW. They even are cool with them making appearances in other promotions from time to time, like Impact or ROH, leading to the fabled Forbidden Door to get blasted open all over the place. As the Hulk said in Avengers Endgame, I see this as an absolute win. Compare all of that to what the Fed has been doing lately, pushing Roman Reigns as their top babyface for years when people completely hated it, and by the time they finally turned him heel, it was far too late, ruining the run of Bray Wyatt, who had one of the most unique characters ever, even more so when he became The Fiend with one of the most creative matches in the history of wrestling in the Firefly Funhouse match, only to completely ruin him before running him out of the Fed a year or so later. By the way, I do not blame Alexa Bliss for that, since she was just doing her job, and fuck anyone who threatened her over that. And then there's NXT. I was there when the Black and Gold brand started coming into its own, with guys like Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, the Four Horsewomen, etc. Now look at it. It's a mess. After failing to compete with AEW in the Wednesday Night Wars, they completely rebranded it with NXT 2.0, a bright unicorn diarrhea color scheme, overproduced as fuck, and focused on the same beefy boy BS that made me turn off the Fed in the first fucking place. Would it honestly surprise you that Bruce Pritchard is the one running NXT now? Also, their plan to swoop up all the indie darlings to keep them away from AEW backfired hard, as there was more than enough for AEW to get off the ground, and now those guys, who the Fed gave little or anything to do with, are being released in literal waves, which I feel is the worst offense of all. See, it's not just the smaller guys going here. When you have guys like Braun Strowman, John Morrison, Kurt Angle, Rusev, William Regal, Samoa Joe, and the aforementioned Bray Wyatt all getting released in the last couple of years, you gotta believe that's gonna be demoralizing to those still in there. It's telling them it doesn't matter how good you are or how big of an impact you make here. If Junior, and yeah, I refuse to call him anything else because Vince McMahon hates the Junior in his name, so I'm gonna keep calling him that. If Junior is having a bad day, or if we need to keep the stockholders happy, you're gone. This also hurts fans, as it's impossible to get invested in anyone when they could literally be gone the next day, even if they're in the middle of a major storyline. Aleister Black was right in the middle of a full repackaging, which likely would have led to a decent push, but right as that was about to reach full steam, he was released. How do you do that? How does it feel behind the scenes to work so hard in writing this whole gimmick, making the outfits, putting in all that effort, just for it to get flushed down the toilet before it even has a chance to start? Now he's killing it as Malachi Black in AEW, with even bigger plans about to unfold. Unless you're Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, or a legend that's likely not going to cost that much to bring back for a short stint, you're at risk to be cut at any time. Why even bother at that point? This is why I'm done with the Fed. This is why I'm choosing to watch AEW. And don't give me that, oh, I see we have another bought by Tony Khan bullshit. Tony Khan doesn't even know who the fuck I am. He has no reason to pay me a penny. No, I'm choosing AEW because I legitimately believe that they have some of the best wrestling I've seen in years. That's not to take away from the other smaller promotions out there who all deserve love. Hell, I actually recently became a fan of Danhausen, which is how goofy that son of a bitch can be. But it's reached the point where if I hear a wrestler is signed with the Fed, I take pity on them because they're only there to collect a paycheck, and since AEW can now pay pretty good themselves with how much they're making in, even that reason doesn't hold water. I'm not gonna claim the Fed is gonna die anytime soon. They're making more money than ever, so they'll be fine. But from an entertainment and creative standpoint, WWE is dead and buried. And as long as Junior is running the show, along with his gaggle of cronies like Bruce Pritchard and John Laurinaitis, they'll never come back from it. And even if Junior retired tomorrow, or more than likely keeled over, since that senile bastard is likely gonna die at the wheel, he's likely gonna sell the company to someone else before he does, meaning our only hope, Triple H, is likely not going to be able to fix things. It's clear Junior's regressed to the mindset of having a one Adonis-looking man holding up the entire company again, and he has no reason to change it. So fuck it. I'm going to go where it's fun to watch wrestling again, not this sports entertainment shit. Because honestly, it's not very entertaining to watch anymore. Rest assured, I've been working on this script for a while now, since there's just so much to talk about, with more being added nearly every day. Like how the Fed recently tried to call out AEW, saying that a gory match, referring to a women's street fight where most of the girls were sporting crimson masks by the end, was not going to appeal to their larger audiences, and more importantly, the sponsors. Junior, baby! How easily we forget our past. The Attitude Era had some of the biggest ratings in wrestling history, but it wasn't favored by advertisers, which is their point, but here's the secret to why that is. It wasn't because it got a little bloody here and there. No. That was only a small portion of the problem. The Fed tried to put out an outlandish stories like Pillman's got a gun, hanging the boss man at WrestleMania, Al Snow's dog getting killed and fed to him, and the sexy ladies. Good lord, I bet if they could have had a porn scene in the ring, they'd have done it. And no, Edge and Lita's life sex celebration doesn't count. They were pushing every envelope they could, but it wasn't making the big bucks, which is why they shifted gears into the Ruthless Aggression era. But AEW has mostly avoided those major pitfalls. Sure, things can get bloody here and there, but their stories never get that ridiculous and over the top. As for the women, while they certainly are beautiful to look at, they're also focused on putting on amazing wrestling matches, and not a deluge of bra and panties matches. I'll take Ruby Soho and Jade Cargill wrestling an absolute killer match over Sable stripping, thanks. And if you think the Fed still doesn't have problems, they just renamed one of their NXT guys after a literal Nazi! Yeah, Walter, who's become one of the top guys in NXT, was just this week renamed to Gunther, who was the name of a German U-boat captain in World War II. So, an Austrian man is now named after a German Nazi. What the fuck? If you want a deeper dive into my thoughts, I recently joined Mildred the Monk for an episode of Geek Watch a while back, talking about how I'm not the only one jumping ship to AEW, and explaining why this mass exodus is happening. Right now, the ratings race for the key 18 to 49 demographic is close as hell, and AEW is killing it more and more each week. For long, the stockholders are going to take notice, but it's too late for me now, as I have no intention of ever watching WWE again. This is not, however, a call for a boycott. Those never work. Oh, God knows I wish it would here. This is simply me explaining why I refuse to watch their garbage anymore, and have gone all elite instead. What you decide to do is your choice, and more power to you either way. Just don't try and justify the Fed to me, because I've already heard every argument in the book and ain't nothing been able to convince me. The Shades is all elite, and I'm happy to be a fan of wrestling again because of it. Anyway, that's gonna do for me here today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Shades, and we'll see you next time. Rock on!